Hey, welcome back to Joe and Tell. I'm Joe, and as promised, today we draw the mouth. Well, the lips, to be precise. The shape of the mouth, or the lips, isn't all that difficult to draw. The challenge comes in the shading. There's a lot to do there to make it look realistic. So, because of that, I've decided to bring in some reference photos. Now, this is going to look a little odd, but those are our reference photos for our mouths or our lips, and the materials are the same as before. So, let's get into drawing the mouth, the lips. So drawing the mouth, I think, is even more complicated than maybe drawing something like the ear or the eye, simply because the detail is so subtle that a lot of it has to do with shading as far as how it looks and making it look like lips. One of the techniques I've learned is to, again, break it down in basic shapes. I am using a reference photo. I will provide a link to the reference photo I'm using. But I'm going to start out with this kind of rounded heart shape, something like this. And I'm drawing very light. So you got a basic heart, okay? And then I'm going to draw two kind of bean shapes off to each side of this heart shape. And again, I'm going to keep kind of this rounded plastic or Play-Doh-y look to them. Something like this here, and like this over here. Again, not being perfect at all, just roughing in the shapes. These will all be erased. There are construction lines. So we've got something that looks like a heart with two beans on the side of it. And then underneath this, basically this is the center of the lips. And I'm going to draw another larger bean over here, maybe slanted up a little bit. And then the same thing on this side, slanted the opposite direction. So the edges here are the creases of the mouth, and the beans go up to each crease. So we've got all of our basic beans and heart shapes in there. And then what I'll do is come in and I'll try to connect lines between these shapes. And I'll do a curvy line to this one here, kind of following this bottom bean. Turn my paper and do the same thing on the other side. Again, following this bottom bean. Okay, and I'm going to come out and follow the top bean now out with a little curve going up to follow that bean. Same on the other side. Okay. I drew a little bit darker, but remember to keep your pencil nice and light. So this is going to be the part where the top and the bottom lips meet. And it's going to be the darkest part of the drawing eventually. But for now, I'm going to kind of do the same thing with connecting lines down here on the bottom. I'll do kind of a curve between these two. And then I'm going to follow the bean about halfway up the side. But then instead of going up here, I'm going to go out to the edge here, like that. And I'm going to rotate my paper and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Come up about halfway on the side of the bean and then go all the way up to this corner. And it looks like I might have overshot it a little bit, but we'll fix that. Okay, so that'll be essentially the bottom lip. And then I'll take lines and do the same thing on the top as I did on the bottom. We've already got, we created the curve here, but we've already got that with this heart shape. So I'll just go from the top of the right side of the heart down to the edge or the corner of the mouth, and then the same thing on the other side. Okay, and you can extend the lines past the edges there a little bit. That's fine. So now we've got the overall shape of the lips or the mouth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in and I'm going to start to erase some of my construction lines, get rid of all of this stuff because we won't need it for the final drawing. It was just to help us get to this overall shape. And that's one thing that's really helpful in drawing is if you can break down what you're trying to draw in basic shapes and see those within the form, it'll help you out a lot. Okay, so now I've got something that looks like lips. You can just touch it up wherever you feel like it needs to be touched up. Now on the side of the mouth, there's these little muscles. I don't know what they're called, but that's what gives people these little, sometimes you'll see a little groove or a little curve, whatever you want to call it, on the side of the mouth. So you can indicate that just by giving it a little bit of a curve out like this, almost. Okay. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to darken up this line in the middle and just kind of follow along the previous line I made. And now I'm going to add some shadows. The light's going to be coming down, so that means that typically the top lip is almost always in shadow. So to indicate that, you can just give the whole upper lip some light shading. I'm kind of using the edge of my pencil just to give it some light contrast. Okay, so there's the upper lip that's been shaded. Now the bottom lip is going to be similar, except it is going to have a bit of a shine on the lip. And the shinier it is, the wetter the lip looks, or maybe the more makeup that individual has on. I didn't like the bottom of that, so I'm just going to flatten that out a bit. Okay, and so now what I'll do is the top lip is going to cast a shadow on the bottom lip, but it's not going to be very deep or very long. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of, and I try to, because the lip is curved like this, I'll try to follow that line with my shading lines. So kind of just give them a little bit of shadow on the bottom lip that's being cast down from the top. And same for the other side. And it tends to get a little bit darker in the middle because this extra piece here, the bottom of the heart, casts a shadow. So you can bring that down just a little bit more. Okay, get rid of this line that I was showing you guys, the curve of the lip. Come back in and darken up the line here. Like I said, this will be the darkest part of the lip. Okay, make this part just a little bit darker. And now what I'll do is the similar kind of shading on the bottom of the bottom lip. So keeping that curve going. Kind of looks like a hairy lip, but we'll fix that. So there's some basic shading in, and this is going to be this area here is going to be the highlight. The lip does kind of flatten out on the sides, so you could give it some more shading over here and over here. Okay, lighten this up and give this a little bit more of a hard edge because that's going to be cast in shadow as well. And a lot of this is going to be basically trial and error to see what you think looks good and kind of just working with the shading. And don't worry about shading too much. You can always go back and erase. In fact, a lot of people will do that. They'll do the whole lip in shadow like this. And then they'll come back with the eraser and just kind of erase the highlight on that part of the lip. Something like that. Okay. Again, I'm going to dip down in the middle a little bit and then come up on the sides to follow the curve of this bottom lip. And then maybe I'll just darken up the shadow here a little bit more, coming down around the corners and around the corners on this side. And now this top part is looking pretty flat to me. You'll probably get a little bit of reflective light coming from the bottom lip hitting the top lip. So what I'll do is darken this up a little bit more. This is what I meant by trial and error. I'm kind of figuring this out as I go, so that's part of the fun, part of the process. And I'm going to take my pencil and just lightly kind of erase, just barely, the edge of the bottom of the top lip. And then we can darken this up even further now that we've got kind of an idea of where we want to keep the shadow. And because this heart shape kind of dips down in the middle, I'll follow that through and keep it a little bit lighter on the top. And we'll get rid of some of this heavier line on the top here. It's interesting that typically a male face or male features are a lot easier to draw because of the fact that they are so rigid and have a lot of contrast to them. And a female shape is much softer and subtle. And for me, that's a lot more difficult to draw. But when it comes to lips, for whatever reason, the female lips for me are much easier to draw because there's more definition. It may be because it's makeup or because, I don't know why, but it just seems to be easier for me to draw a female lip and make it look natural versus a male lip. So that's what we're drawing here. And then you just keep shading till you like what you see. This is starting to look something like some lips that I'm imagining or trying to draw. I did say I was using a reference, and if I'm being honest, I barely looked at the reference, which is probably not a good idea. But let's touch this up a little bit on each side. And get rid of some of this smudginess around the edges. That's not too bad. Looks like lips, right? Darken this up some more. Here. And then if you want to add some more detail around the lips, there's this little part of the above the lip that kind of dips down, this fleshy part that casts like a bit of shadow on each side, depending on where the light falls. And then of course the underneath the lip is going to be a little bit of a shadow. So there's the chin, top of the chin, and then you're going to have some shading that comes down here like this. And we want to add a little more darker shading. Okay. It looks a little muddy to me. Darken this bottom up to see if I can make it pop out a little bit more. And then as you get to the edges, this bottom line tends to get softer. Okay. And that is going to do it, I think, for looking at the lips straight on. Now, from the side is a different deal. You have to get kind of the profile of the face in. And to do that, I'm going to basically just do an outline. I don't really have shapes for this part of it. You can follow the same basic idea that I did earlier, but instead of doing the full heart, you'll do something like half of the heart. So this is going to be one side of that heart, although what I said was half the heart, so that would basically be something like this, right? And it comes down. Okay, so that would be, and the other half is right here, of course, but we're not drawing that. And we'll have our bean come down like that, and then a much larger bean on the bottom. And it's actually going to probably come out about the same distance as this top part. There's our bottom bean. Right now it looks like nothing but ovals or circles or whatever. But what I'll do is I'll kind of come up with a line from the top, and this is where the nose would go up here, and then down here do a curve and come down, and this is where the chin would be. But for the actual lips themselves, I'm going to come out and I'm going to make this a little bit harder edge, so curved out and then more of a straighter, almost like kind of a boxy shape. And I'll bring that up to here. And then on the top, from where I can't stop that line, I'm going to come up to the top. And I think I made this heart too tall when I first started. So what I'll do is I'll erase that, and then I'm going to come out with this heart shape that I had a little bit shorter, a little bit flatter. Okay, and then I'll have that line come down to the edge of the mouth. And this is that little divot or whatever you call it. And then I can bring the bottom lip line to that same spot. Okay, get rid of my construction lines. And essentially that's what the lips look like closed. Obviously we need to put in some shading, so I'll put my lines back in. You can also draw them open just a little bit, which is what the picture I'm looking at has. So I'm going to come with a line here, kind of just stop before I get to the end. And then inside here, I'm going to come down. So it's going to give an idea of like depth. There's going to be teeth in here and whatnot, but you don't have to draw those. Just color that in. All right. So now, again, same rules apply. Shadow is being cast from the top down. So this top lip is going to be in shadow. Nice and light at first. And then the bottom lip too will be in shadow. I'm still kind of trying to curve my pencil to get the idea that there's curve to this shape. Okay. And I will do the same thing I did up here is I'll erase a little bit the bottom lip to kind of indicate that shine. Give it a little bit more shadow on the bottom. This shadow here is going to be cast here, something like this. Okay. Bring this up just a little bit. Again, it's all experimentation. I'm just kind of playing around to see what I like, what I think looks good. And the more you do this, the more you'll know, you know what? that doesn't look quite right, or I really like the way that looks, and then you'll be able to go from there. All right, so now I'm gonna, because the shadow is cast down, and this is the inside of the mouth, I'm gonna shade this inner part of the lip in pretty dark. Not as dark as this, but still pretty dark. And then I'm gonna bring that shadow in a little bit more down here. And maybe a little bit more down here. And then the top lip's going to cast a bit of a shadow as well. That heart shape, so here we got that shadow. That's going to be something like this here. Okay, and if you get it too dark, it's fine. Just go back and lighten it up with the eraser. Again, you can get rid of some of your smudginess. Make the lines nice and clean, sharp. And that's going to help sell the shape. Now the lip's going to look a lot more like lips when you have the rest of the person, the profile drawn, so it'll certainly help sell that. You can add the little divot in if you'd like, but this is a video about drawing just the lips and not where they sit on the face or anything like that. Another thing you can do is practice expressions, which will really challenge you as far as drawing the lips, because then they're in all kinds of different shapes and sizes and positions. And all right, well, so those are my lips. Could they be better? Probably. Do they look like lips? Yeah, I think so. So again, just keep playing, keep practicing, and be easy on yourself, because lips are very challenging to draw, because it's all about the shading, really. The basic shape's pretty simple, but the shading is what gets you. So hopefully this was helpful. We'll see you in the next video. Was drawing the mouth, or the lips, I should say. Hopefully you were able to follow along. Most of that was shading, as I said, and that can be tricky at times, so just keep practicing. I have included a link to several photos of lips and mouths on a Pinterest board. So if you're interested, take a look, use those as your reference. Maybe they'll help out. And as always, a like and a subscribe is greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you in the next video.